Alright guys, phase 2 or second cut, 193 heads, 20216s. Basically the ports haven't been touched. I cut for bigger valve sizes and blended it into those sizes. I did do a little more work to the chamber because when I put the bigger valve in, I do a plunge cut with a big stone. Okay, it's got my top cut angle and it's got a radius on it. It may be a little chewed up right now, but you get the idea. Then you just have to finish the chamber a little bit with the burr. Believe me, I did not waste a lot of time making it pretty. Okay, but it does take a good size piece out right here for the bigger valve. Now I won't be able to open that up anymore when I go to a 2055. It is possible that the 202 works better than the 2055. I don't know. I'll find out when I cut it. I do think our liquid is really telling us a story at this point. Check out the angle on that. By the way, we talked about the swirl port, but in technical terms, it's a high helix swirl port. Okay? High helix means the amount of twist that the screw inside the port has. Now, I haven't changed that much. In fact, it's pretty much exactly the way you guys saw it last time. I did do a little work at the bottom of the bowl, making it a little bit bigger for the bigger valve, but not much. I did have to go through with the sonic and make sure it wasn't getting any and thinning any spots. It's still pretty good, but I really probably going to have to watch it when I go to the bigger valve. And it starts to get thin right under here, right about here is where it looks like it's going to be a problem. Okay, may not be bad on this side because you can give it more of a radius on this inside edge. This side needs to be straighter because we can't get as much out right here, so you might as well bring that over. That's a Darren Morgan thing. Give credit where credit's due. Okay, take a look at our chamber. Usually we don't get splatter on this side of the chamber, but we do this time. Before I forget, this is really interesting. You guys will like this. What is this right here? I'll tell you what it is. We had some liquid that didn't quite dry, and by the time I started testing the exhaust, it pulled that liquid right into the exhaust port. Kind of cool, right? Alright, the exhaust, you can see I just I cut the seat, I burred it in. It's all rough. Take a look at how much splatter we have on the other side of the chamber. You know what we need to look at? We need to look at what's on the exhaust valve too. Okay. You can see the direction that the fuel will go right across that exhaust valve. The intake valve used was an old 202 that's really worn. I just cut fresh seat and fresh back cut on it. Nothing special. It's kind of interesting how that liquid on the back of the bowl really mirrors the guide. Okay, pretty cool. Now remember, I haven't opened this port up. I'm going to straighten that wall out after I go to the bigger valve. I think phase 3 is just going to be opening up this to a 2055, and maybe I'll polish the short side on the exhaust and we'll test it that way. Okay, the short side did have to get some more work because I wound up bringing that out quite a bit for the bigger valve. You can see it's not my usual quality because it's just testing phase as quick as I can burn it out. Even at that, it was still probably an hour and a half to do two. It was probably more than 2.5. Probably 2 hours just to do 2 seats and and grind the bowls in. Okay, the exhaust port is basically the same, just radiused in. Run it. Okay. First cut, pink. I know it's your favorite color. Versus second cut. How'd we do? Remember, this is going from a 194 intake valve with a back cut to a 202 with a back cut. I'm pretty sure it liked it. And the gains aren't small. In usable range, we got 20 CFM. Not bad. By the way, somebody made a good point that first cut with a 194 is as good as a 202 Fuelie that's not ported. Actually, a little better on the exhaust than a 202 Fuelie. So maybe they're not as bad as people say after all. I don't know. It's a possibility. What do you think? We're a little low at 300. I would like to get that, my go-to number at 300 is about 200 CFM. That's what you should be seeing with a decent-sized valve. Okay, let's take a look at our air speeds across the pinch. Minus, plus, plus. Okay, decent gains, but didn't change much on the roof. Interesting. As far as our roof speeds, we got a big jump up center of the cylinder. Now remember, center of the cylinder is this side. I'm surprised there's so much dirt in here. I hope I didn't flow that with that dirt sticking there. I'm gonna guess that's what that was. I thought I did a good job cleaning, but I could have goofed up. See, one thing it's interesting with the swirl ports is you can't just blow the dirt out of the port. Because if I blow down the port this way, it picks up the garbage and it throws it right into my face. Not cool. So it looks like those flows had some dirt in the screw port. But it's interesting how much air wants to come off of this side, the roof, and the floor versus this side, okay? Now remember, you can only go so far. You can't make this too thin. You need to get rid of the heat of the valve. All right, so you can bullet nose it quite a bit towards the tip, but you're still going to need some meat on this side. And our short side radius speeds, this is what they were. And that's what they are. They went down a little bit, center of the cylinder, and went up to cylinder wall side. But they're more even now. Okay, means it's happier. Let's take a look at the exhaust. Okay, exhaust is interesting. Now all we did is went from a 1.5 to a 1.6 and radius the bowl in. Did it like it? Looks like it. Interesting point. We didn't top out much better. So what that's telling me is we're getting basically port saturation for the CSA we have. We're putting about as much air through as we can. Remember, the port's still tiny. And if it's going to be a street application, you really want a tiny port. Now, I'm not saying these are going to stay at tiny port, because we want to get some serious RPM out of these, which is not going to be easy due to, our intake flows, which not great yet. I'm going to have to put a bigger exhaust port in this. I do have to watch the casting thickness. It's not the thickest casting in the world, but it's very heavy casting. All right, let's take a look. As far as inch and 5/8 pipe, we went up. Inch and 7/8 pipe, we went up. It's not bad where it sits right now, and remember, it has a rough short side still. So what I think I'm going to do is due to our air speeds. All right, these are our old air speeds. These are our new air speeds. The air speeds actually improved a lot. Take a look at how much they went up right in the center. It was 105. It was really low. It went up to 328. Okay, the port overall is way happier. I had a feeling going to the bigger valve would even a lot of that up, and I was right. Now, After I polish the floor, I hope to get that dead spot on the floor to improve a little bit. We'll see. We'll check it out, and it'll either work or it won't. I mean, chances are this will get completely polished exhaust because we're going to have to squeeze every ounce we can out of them. All right, guys. What else do we need to talk about? Oh, you know what? Let me get a little bit different view of that bowl view. Okay, I think this is kind of interesting. Now, it still has, you can still see part of the bowl that really hasn't even been touched. Okay? I should check out what our throat ratio is. I bet our throat ratio is pretty tight on both of these. Let's do that. All right, our bowl ratios are really tight. Doesn't matter. I'm not fiddling with it at this point. We're going to go up in valve size, and then we'll worry about throat ratio later. But overall, with such tight throat ratios, they still work quite well. So we'll keep that in mind. Remember, I like my throat ratios right around 88 and 86. 86 for the exhaust. So, almost forgot to show you the bore. All right, let's get there. Okay, the bore is starting to look very different from what we originally had. Okay, you can see how tight an angle that air is pouring in from. It's interesting stuff, guys. I really like the screw ports. It would be nice if I could figure out a way to get some decent power out of these. I think this is a fun project. Got to stretch your brain a little bit, and believe me, my brain needs some stretching. Alright, guys. 12 minutes in. Let me think if I need to tell you guys about anything else. Alright, I'm drawing a blank. So, I guess I should add in, I did put a little bit of a plateau on that exhaust, because I don't like the sharp edge, which is basically the way I did it back in the 80s. I kept this tight. Basically, this is cut with the stone. All right, bring it out pretty close to the gasket line with the stone, blend it out, but I kept it tight on this side because the original design was like that, and I was afraid of taking too much away. Remember, the more you get on this side of the short side, flow will go against your swirl, which we didn't even look at our swirls. Let's take a second and look at that. Oof. Okay, guys, sorry about the swirls. At least I didn't finish the recording. Here's our swirls. Plus, plus, minus, 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 plus, plus, plus. We're breaking 4,000 at this point. And you know, it reminds me of something my friend Nicky said. Nicky owned the machine shop I used to basically live at when I lived on the island. And I told him about this plan. Actually, it was many, many years after I had done it, because he had a throttle body injection Suburban with 260,000 miles on it. It was never touched, with like 35-inch tires. So, you know, it didn't have an easy life. He had 6 kids. So, when I told him I put the 2055 valve in it, he goes, man, that thing must swirl like crazy. He was a very intuitive guy, very smart guy. And sure enough, it looks like he was right. All right, as you're shrinking down the chamber, take a look. This is what the chamber looks like with the 202, okay? Notice how much tighter we are, right? In these areas. This piece here is a mistake. That should be actually filled in, you know? But that's the way they cast it, so that's what you're stuck with. So as you bring the valve out, it makes it harder to get the air out on this side, right? Now you have to wonder what that does. Well, it's going to keep the air in the bowl more and exit more on this side. So it would more than likely increase our swirl even more. Now, is it bad to have stuff at 4,000 RPM? Well, I remember when I first tested my bow ties, and those were cut probably around the early 90s. And they ran really well, even though they didn't flow that great. They only flowed 282. And they were up around 4,000 RPM swirl. And got to remember, bow tie is a straight port. But when I do my fuely chamber cut in the bow tie, that helps the swirl. They were a very responsive head. They were a great street head, those bow ties. All right, guys. I think we're good. Thanks for hanging out, enjoying this project. Got a lot more to figure out before we can even get into doing the real work on the real heads. Give me your opinion of how it's going, what we should be doing, and thanks for watching. Have a good night.